Hey guys, Mr. E here, and I guess you could call this Slop Died News, because this is a little bit old news. This is an interview that happened about a month ago, right around the release date of the Arbidius, and it was by an outlet called Shack News. It barely has any views, but thankfully my fellow tuber Jefficus caught it. If you want to see his video covering the interview, go check it out here. And it's also in the description, by the way. But I also want to go over this today because I think there's still some meat on these bones to dissect and digest. And you know us as Dark Tide players, we are always hungry for any little scrap of information we can get. So let's go ahead and dive in here. I guess I should preface that this is an interview with Victor Magnuson. I believe that's his name. He's the game dev, or the game director for Fatshark, and specifically over Dark Tide. So he is going to be talking about the future of Dark Tide, going to be asked questions concerning generally how they do things and give us some insights about the future. I'm going to be cutting ahead in certain parts of this because he does talk a lot about the Arbidius, which we know, right? We've been playing with it for a month, but let's see what insights he can give us about the future. Let's go.
Really cool.
You know, there are a lot of units, and there are a lot of units just in Imperial Guard. I'm sorry, what do they call it? Like arcade? What do they call them now? Not the Imperial Guard. I'm going to use the old term.
It is Imperial Guard as well.
Yeah, the Imperial Guard or Space Marines or Adeptus Mechanicus.
Yeah.
How do you guys go about deciding what you're going to pull from and insert into your game? Because there's so many options, and everyone has their favorite.
Yeah, it is a quite long process, to be honest. We look at lots of them. When we decided to do the Arbidius, we had three different ideas on the shortlist. But then in the end, we opted for the Arbidius because we knew that from Vermintide, that the pet class, we did a Necromancer in Vermintide, was super popular. So we wanted to do a pet class. So that was sort of the deciding factor this time. But we will be doing more classes in the future.
Alright, so let's pause it there. So a couple of very interesting tidbits here. One, we already knew they were doing classes in the future, but this is nice to have that guaranteed confirmation. Two, the fact that the Arbidius was one of 3 classes on the shortlist bodes very well for our future prospects. That means that there's at least 2 other classes that they've done some level of work on. Whether or not that means they made concept art or even got some of the 3D models or the talents together, began designing the weapons, we have no idea. Presumably some level of work was done on those, so we could be looking at a shorter production pipeline for these. Obviously, that's pure speculation there, but I think the most information that we get out of this is actually something that occurs in the negative. He says that the reason that the Arbidius was chosen was because it's a pet class, and that means that by definition the other 2 classes are not pet classes, which does exclude a lot of people who are thinking that like maybe tech priests with a servitor sort of pet or servitor minion would be the operative that's coming to the game next, and I think that shoots that down. So we're going to be looking at classes that are sans pet for at least the next 2 releases, and that does kind of say to me that they are looking at releasing at least 2 more classes. Now when those will be, who knows? Let's let him continue on and maybe he'll tell us.
And yeah, as you say, it is. There's a lot to choose from, so it's really hard to decide which one to do.
You guys have a lot of weapons and tools and stuff like that. Do you guys look at the codexes and like kind of go, okay, so this gun's super powerful, this is what AP2 is? Like, do you guys look at that stuff when you're adding stuff into the game and try to make it as close to the codex right as possible?
Yes, I currently have a codex on my desk back in Sweden. I won't tell you why, but I am looking at some stuff, yes.
All right, pausing right there. So a codex is basically the game manual for how you play Warhammer, the tabletop game. And if you are interested, let's look up Warhammer codexes. Okay, and then we'll go to, I guess, this list. All right, so let's look. This is the 10th edition of codexes, the most recent stuff. So these are the books for the armies that we could be pulling from. And so we've got Space Marines, Blood Angels, Dark Angels. This is all Space Marine stuff up here, so unlikely to be seeing it. But Adeptus Sororitas, Adeptus Custodes, Adeptus Mechanicus, Astra Militarum, Imperial Agents, and then Grey Knights, Imperial Knights, Chaos Space Marines. Okay, so I mean, pretty likely somewhere in here, right? Somewhere in here looks like we're doing something, or perhaps it could even be a codex that he's looking at that's about Xenos, perhaps for an enemy faction, maybe like this one right here, or the Tyranids that might be coming to the game, or Codex Genestealer cults that might be coming to the game, because Tyranids would be a little bit crazy, wouldn't it? But yeah, I think that, if I were Fatshark, I would be pulling from the current editions of these books, because this is the stuff that is sanctioned by Warhammer or by Games Workshop currently. So these are our options for what they're currently looking at, and this must mean that these are the things we're going to be including in the game next. This does mean that like a lot of the more fan-centric ideas are straight out. If it's not on the tabletop, as Jevicus mentioned in his video, it's just not going to be happening. I think we already knew that in our heart of hearts. Let's continue.
Marines confirmed, right? That's the...
No, I mean, the thing with the Dark Tide is that there are no Space Marines. Like, you play as a human. That is the goal of the game, to portray like the human side of Warhammer 40,000 and how it would be to be a normal person, or at least like maybe a military, but like quite capable, but still a human being, and not a like space god, Space Marine that lives for 10,000 years and is able to like kill everything they see.
Right. And that's the difference too. Like, you wanted to tell a story that was about mortality, and Space Marines in the lore also, they're set in very specific situations. They're there for a reason. They're death squads. They're elite units. They're the Navy SEALs, right? Like, so it wouldn't make any sense for them to be like, why would they be at this forage world planet going down? No. You know what I mean? Like, for not knowing what's down there. They make them in after, but not now.
No, we usually think of it, if the Space Marines arrive, the war is over. Like, the planet has given up. Like, okay, they're going to demolish the whole planet. So we're trying to stop that from happening, basically.
Alright, so that tells us, we already knew there was never going to be Space Marines as a playable character, but this also tells us that we're never going to be really fighting alongside any Space Marines, because that just means that the Inquisition has given up. Any chance of the planet resisting on its own are over, and they're having to send in the cleanup crew with the Adeptus Astartes, etc., etc. That would not bode well. So we won't be seeing Space Marines, at least allied Space Marines, by his own admission there. All right, cutting forward a little bit, he has another good question for Victor.
In the original launch of the game, you chose Nurgal and Cultus as kind of the main enemies, but man, boy, I'd love to see Genestealer cult in this, and it makes perfect sense.
That is something that a lot of our community as well are asking for, so who knows?
How do those decisions get made? I mean, obviously you chose Nurgle, but like, do you guys sit down and work with Games Workshop, or you just see what works well with gameplay, what works well with the story?
Yeah, we are constantly in discussions with Games Workshop about every detail of the game that we do. We have a weekly meeting with them where we show all our plans. We show them every concept art, every model, everything. So we're constantly in discussions with them, and this is one of the discussions that we definitely have with them as well.
All right, so that actually sheds some interesting light on the relationship that Fatshark has to Games Workshop. I had been informed in the past by prior employees at Fatshark that they did have a sort of relationship like this when the game was being developed, that there was constantly someone like looking over their shoulder, and that is in fact, as I understand, sort of what we have to blame for the lack of weapon customization, the lack of a real actually being able to choose which mission you go on, because weapon customization goes against some of the core tenets of Games Workshop in terms of like not modifying the minifigs, not modifying the weapons that would appear on the plastic, basically, because they need those to resemble that one-to-one. That's a big thing to them. So that's why we didn't get weapon customization, is because, if you customize a weapon and add a scope that it doesn't have in the canon, then you are not playing Warhammer anymore, you're playing Call of Duty, or as they once famously said. The other part of this is the fact that we don't have the choice to pick which mission we go on, because we are lower in the hierarchy, right? We are very low in the hierarchy. We are being ordered to different places, and I also understand that was sort of top-down directive from Games Workshop, that you have to make these characters feel powerless, because you cannot have you cannot have power over the Inquisition. You can't have these rejects directing where the Inquisition goes and does missions. So that makes sense to me. Let's let him continue.
How do you guys decide what weapons and tools get placed in the game? Because again, huge arsenal on both the Space Marine and the Imperial Guard side for just weapons, melee weapons, shields, armor, everything.
Well, it's a combination of what is available to the characters, but also we try to look at our current roster of weapons and see if there are any sort of holes or niches that we're not sort of supplying, or something that we maybe only have one weapon in a specific niche, and then we try to fill that hole as much as we can.
So, I mean, that's pretty sensible. Ooh, I like the little details on the shell here as the shotgun is firing. Wow, that's really, look, you can even see the firing where the firing pin hit the detonation cap. That's cool. But when he's talking about these weapons and how they choose them, one important thing to note is that pretty much every element of the Arbidius as we got him comes from how he is represented one-to-one on the tabletop. In fact, his standard ability, the Nuncio Aquila, a lot of people were like scratching their heads like, what does this have to do with the Arbidius? But if you have played the tabletop, it's actually in the minifigure, like one of the figures for the Arbidius has this Nuncio Aquila floating alongside him. So it's a very, very standard part of it. So I think a lot could be gleaned, like as soon as we have any hints as to where the direction might be going, just start researching the hell out of whatever that is in the Codice, and you'll probably get like 90% of it right, which I think is handy to do to sort of predict the direction the game is going. They're also talking about, they want to create weapons that are going to be fill niches, fill spots in the game where there's like only one other weapon that's doing that role. Immediately to my mind jumps the grenade launcher, so maybe veteran grenade launcher. Hell yeah, that sounds good to me. But let's carry on.
Is it easier for your team to implement a weapon that you've seen in other video games before? I mean, Space Marine 2, the Relic series. Some of those weapons have been, but some of the stuff you have in this game has never been done in 3D before or had animation before. It's only had the either tabletop picture or the add-on in the Codex.
Yeah. I mean, easy would be the wrong word. I wouldn't use that word, but yeah, we've gotten a lot better at doing weapons, like doing it now we started working on this game 6.5 years ago, I think. So there's been a lot of work done, and now as we get more comfortable sort of doing stuff, we are able to do it faster. But it is still a lot of work. The melee system in the game. It takes a lot of animations to get it feel just right. So there is a lot of work for each weapon. So it's like we have something called marks in the game, which is like variations of the same weapon. That is quite quick to do. If we have like an auto gun to do a second mark on an auto gun, that is quite fast for us to do. But any new weapon that is not sort of similar to any of the existing weapons takes a lot of time and a lot of animation and a lot of tweaking and fixing. Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, we knew this all already, but yeah. So like, that's a big thing. That's a big part of the reason we don't see just like, why don't they print new weapons all the time? It's a lot easier for them to print new range weapons or new marks. That's a big part of the reason that like over the last 2 years, most of the new weapons we've gotten have just been marks on old weapons. They're not really like new weapons, because all that is just reassigning or reordering the weapon swing patterns and the damage numbers, etc., etc. But when you're creating a full new weapon, I mean, there's so much animation that goes into it. There's so much balance. You have to figure out how this thing is break pointed. You have to figure out like, how it actually swings, where its hurt boxes are, all that stuff. I mean, I imagine it's a tremendous effort. So all that combined with the fact that Games Workshop is looking over their shoulder every week. I don't know if he said that yet, but he does go on to say that Games Workshop and them sit down every single week and they go over what they're currently doing. I mean, that's a lot of oversight. That's a lot of time and effort that goes into making these things happen. And you have to imagine that sometimes Games Workshop, just like with the weapon customization thing, will come in and just shoot them down and say, no, scrap all that, because that does not fit what our plan is for our IP, etc., etc. All right, skip forward a little bit here. The interviewer is asking about procedural generation, perhaps in the future.
Man, I would love to see you guys try to do some procedural generated tile tech to make all the maps different every time you play. Have you guys discussed that internally?
It is something that we are experimenting with. I'm not promising anything here.
No, you're just testing. This is a test, folks. You're not.
Exactly. But we have a team that are experimenting with all the new AI stuff that is coming out now and see how we could use it and what we can do with it. It's still so early on. We don't really know. Like everybody else, it's like we're sort of a bit wandering around, a bit blind at this new sort of technology that we are faced with. But we're definitely sort of poking at it and trying to figure out how we can use it in a cool way.
So.
That's interesting. I mean, I don't have a whole lot of hopes that Darktide itself will ever see any sort of AI system implemented. I imagine that if they do end up using a system like that, it will be in its own separate game. I imagine ripping out the core systems at play for Darktide's game director might be a little bit too late into the into the lifespan of the game to endeavor like that. But it is very interesting to think about potentially a reality where the game director isn't just a set of like algorithms that are computing and determining like, hey, have you advanced this far? But it is in fact an AI, like a learning AI that's antagonizing you. That does really titillate me as like the future of gaming in that way. And also just to think about the maps, which is something that I believed way back when Darktide hadn't quite come out yet, they were talking about modular maps, and what that ultimately ended up being was they are creating these large tile sets, and then they reconstruct them in different ways so that certain maps share the same tiles. Like all of the maps in the Hourglass share at least one of the same tiles with another one in the Hourglass, and that was a lot less interesting than what I thought it was. It would be very cool to potentially see a future where these maps are randomly generated, where there are enough tiles to put them all together, but that would require them to have a lot more map tiles to put together. Otherwise, you're going to end up feeling like it's Oblivion, where you have like the same 10 tiles rearranged to make every cave and castle in the game. All right, skip forward yet again, asking some questions that are trying to catch Victor here on the spot. Let's see what he says.
This is a lore question. With the implication of the Inquisition isn't doing hot with pulling of the Nurgle infestation on the planet, pushing the arbitraries to step in, could this mean that maybe gangers or upper hive mind will be more involved with attempting to stem the tide of the Mobian Six?
Yeah. Maybe. No, I can't answer that, sorry.
Anything is possible.
So there's no less than 4 cuts in that little bit there. I'm thinking our interviewer, our question asker, did ramble a little bit in his question. Maybe that was the first 2 cuts. But then notably, Victor is cut twice himself during what he's saying. Perhaps that was at his own behest, that he said a little bit too much and gave away things. Those are interesting ideas, right? I've seen people talking before about gangers and those sort of things being who gets called in to help deal with this hive infestation. Those are all definitely on the table. Let's continue.
Anything is possible, that is true.
You know, off the table, if you could do anything, if time, money, and budget and approvals weren't a question, is there a specific weapon or class or faction you'd want to put in the game, and why?
I definitely think if we had like unlimited budget and resources for a while, I would definitely do another faction. I think that's probably the first thing I would do, because I think the game is ripe for some new enemies. So yeah, that's where I would put my money. Yeah.
There are people out there who love the.
All right, so I mean that pretty much tells you all you need to know, right? This is the game director, the guy who makes the shots, calls the shots, and tells you, what to develop next. And he says that he would put his money on making a new enemy faction. That the game is ripe for a new enemy faction. I couldn't agree more. That I think that after the introduction of the Arbidius, especially if we're going to be popping out a few class reworks in the upcoming quarterly updates, we're going to have plenty of class diversity and weapon diversity. I think what we really need is an update to those old dated enemies and an introduction of a new enemy faction, and that would really, really up the game and bring it to Darktide 2.0. And I mean, this is the guy who's making these decisions, and he's saying that is where he would take it if he had unlimited money and stuff. But you got to imagine, especially after the release of the Arbidius, they're probably doing pretty well right now. That definitely made them back the money they invested into it, I'd have to imagine. And then just wrapping everything up, he asks a question about collaboration with Owlcat, because this recent update, the Arbidius update, was a kind of a collab with Owlcat, where they were releasing a class within Rogue Trader that was the same Adeptus Arbidius. So he'll ask that.
Do you plan on doing more collabs with our Owlcat?
We don't have anything planned right now, but it was really fun doing it with Owlcat. I think it was like a month or two ago. So if they're up for it, I think we are as well.
So leaving the door open to future collaboration, but right now they're not collaborating. What to me that means is whatever Owlcat is coming out with next. I've been seeing some rumors that people know what the next Owlcat class is going to be for Rogue Trader. Whatever that is will not be the next class for Darktide is what I have to assume based on that logic right there. But it would be cool to see future collaborations between them, because I think it did draw a lot of cross hype, and it was really cool to look at the similarities and the differences between how those were rendered in their universes. And that's about everything, guys. So some takeaways from this is we've got at least 2 more classes that are somewhere in that production pipeline. It might take a little longer than you expect, because of course things take a long time in the dev world, and we also have Games Workshop looking over their shoulder every single week. If you want inspiration, if you want to put your finger on your next best guess for what's coming to Darktide next, whatever it is in one of the codices. It is something from the tabletop. We are adhering to that. So I think based on our game devs, our director's own words here, odds are very good for a new enemy faction, and he even does a little sly smile in his voice for talking about how the viewers want Gene Stealers, so that anything is possible, as he says at one point in this interview. Well, that's everything I have to cover for today. I hope you enjoyed this little look into it, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.